In 1969, the discovery of the Achapisk oil field off Norway's coast transformed the small fishing nation into one of the world's wealthiest countries. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Norway's oil revenues soared, helping its sovereign wealth fund grow to $1.7 trillion by 2025, the largest in the world. Now, a new discovery in southwestern Norway may reshape its future again. Geologists have uncovered phosphate deposits valued at $24 trillion, a resource that could make Norway not just wealthy, but potentially the richest nation in human history. Phosphate. Phosphate is one of the most critical resources in today's world, yet it is often overlooked by most people. Nearly 90% of all mined phosphate is used to create fertilizers that are vital for global agriculture and for feeding billions of people. However, its importance extends beyond farming. Phosphate is also a key component in lithium iron phosphate (LFP) batteries, which are increasingly in demand for electric vehicles and renewable energy storage. In addition, phosphate is used in solar panels, semiconductors, and advanced electronics, making it essential for both food security and modern technology. The problem, however, is that phosphate is not evenly distributed around the world. While some regions, like Western Europe, naturally have phosphorus-rich soils, supply and demand. Around 30% of the world's arable land, including parts of Africa, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, suffers from phosphorus-poor soils. In these regions, fertilizers are not just beneficial, but absolutely necessary to maintain crop yields and feed rapidly growing populations. Yet, only a few countries control the vast majority of global phosphate reserves. Morocco leads the world with nearly 50 billion tons, followed by China with 3.8 billion, Egypt with 2.8 billion, Tunisia with 2.5 billion, and Russia with 2.4 billion. This concentration of supply makes phosphate a strategic resource tied directly to global food security. For Europe, which has virtually no domestic reserves, phosphate dependency is becoming a growing concern. The European Union relies heavily on imports and has officially classified phosphate as a critical raw material, underlining its vulnerability to disruptions in supply chains. China's control. Most of Europe's phosphate imports come from just a handful of exporters, with China emerging as the most dominant player. By 2025, China controlled nearly 30% of the global phosphate market, acting not only as one of the largest producers, but also as the world's top processor of raw phosphate rock into finished fertilizers. However, China's grip on phosphate has tightened further since it began restricting exports in 2021 to protect its own food security for a population of 1.4 billion people. Each year, the restrictions grew more severe, and by 2025, phosphate exports had dropped by nearly 60% compared to pre-restriction levels. This trend has raised major concerns about future supply shortages and has highlighted the vulnerability of nations dependent on foreign phosphate for both agriculture and technology. The opportunity. Russia's reduced phosphate exports to Europe, driven by sanctions and trade restrictions after its invasion of Ukraine, have deepened the EU's vulnerability. The bloc imports both raw phosphate and finished fertilizers, making its heavy dependence on external suppliers not just an economic issue, but also a geopolitical risk. This growing reliance has quietly become one of the EU's biggest weaknesses. In this context, Norway sees a unique opportunity to step in as a new supplier, reducing Europe's dependency and reshaping global trade in this critical resource. Norway's massive discovery. In June 2023, a quiet farming region in Rogaland, southwestern Norway, suddenly became the center of global attention. Geological surveys by the Anglo-Norwegian company Norge Mining revealed the largest phosphate deposit ever found. Early estimates suggest reserves of at least 70 billion tons, nearly equal to the entire previously known global total of 71 billion tons. This means Norway alone could meet global phosphate demand for the next 50 years. For Morocco, whose economy depends heavily on phosphate exports, this is troubling news. Doubling the world's reserves could lower prices and reduce Morocco's economic influence. Beyond phosphate, other critical resources. Norway's discovery didn't end with phosphate. The same region also contains vast reserves of titanium and vanadium, both vital for aerospace, electronics, and defense industries. Currently, production of these resources is dominated by BRICS nations like China, Russia, South Africa, and Brazil. Norway's entry into this sector could provide the US and EU with a more reliable and stable alternative, reducing dependence on politically volatile suppliers. This positions Norway as not just a phosphate giant, the environmental cost. Despite its promise, phosphate mining comes with serious environmental challenges. For every ton of phosphoric acid produced, about 5 tons of toxic waste are generated. These radioactive byproducts, known as gyp stacks, accumulate into massive piles that are dangerous to both people and the environment. In Florida alone, 25 such stacks exist, some containing elevated levels of radon and uranium. In 2016, a sinkhole beneath one of these stacks released millions of gallons of wastewater directly into the aquifer, contaminating drinking water supplies. With ore quality declining globally, more energy is needed for extraction, releasing harmful metals such as cadmium and uranium. This creates a new dilemma for Europe: how to balance resource independence with strict environmental standards. Norway's green commitments. Norway itself is deeply committed to environmental protection and the green transition. Despite being a major oil exporter, the country has pledged to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. Norway has already set global examples by introducing a carbon tax as early as 1990 and even electrifying parts of its offshore oil platforms. Domestically, the transition has been rapid. By April 2025, 97% of new car purchases in Norway were electric, making it the world's first fully electric vehicle society. Hydropower, which generates 90% of Norway's electricity, has played a crucial role in this success, giving the nation one of the cleanest and most stable energy systems in the world. Balancing wealth and responsibility. Norway's phosphate discovery presents both immense opportunities and major challenges. With reserves worth an estimated $24 trillion, the country has the potential to become the richest nation in history while reshaping global supply chains. Yet large-scale extraction carries risks, from radioactive waste to carbon-intensive processing. Norge Mining has pledged to integrate carbon capture into its phosphate facilities to keep emissions low, but the environmental and political hurdles remain significant. Every decision Norway makes in this sector could impact not just its own prosperity, but also the global balance of power in resources, technology, and food security.